All right, so we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our viewers around the world. Thanks for tuning in for this webinar. This is our first Friday Fireside chat. So we're really excited to start this new series. This is basically a continuation of our previous AppSecEngineer podcast sessions that we used to have, and this is just like an informal sort of Friday chat that we're planning to have pretty much every week going forward. So this week we have two guests. We have two guests from two very different worlds. One in completely into security, and one into development. So we have Vishwanath Chiravuri and Palak Bhavsar. So before we get into the real session, I'd like to give a quick introduction of both of our guests. So we'll start with Vishwanath. Vishwanath Chiravuri is an accomplished software security expert with over 18 years of experience. He's done threat modeling, secure coding, supply chain security, cloud security, and DevSecOps. And he's trained over 3,000 professionals, created security guidelines, and is a speaker at a public conferences and events. So he's currently working as a technical director of software security at Thales. And
Hello.
thank you so much for joining us, Vishwanath.
Thank you, Anish. Thank you for the introduction. Although I wish you would have introduced her first, but thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And Palak Bhavsar is a software engineer and a technical blogger. She's working in development, testing, and cloud. She's also cultivated an interest in DevOps and cloud. So she has done multiple certifications in AWS and worked on several POCs in DevOps. Palak is also an accomplished technical blogger and has built a huge network of 10,000 learners and industry professionals on LinkedIn. Currently, she works as a software engineer at CGI. So we're really happy to have you here, Palak, with us.
Yeah, thanks.
So,
thanks, Anish, for having me here.
Yeah, so with that out of the way, before we get started, I just like to mention that at the end of this live session, we will be having a tiny bonus for the viewers who stick around till the end. So please do watch right till the end. It's a 30-minute session, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot from our guests. So with that, let's get started. I think we'll start with a question for Vishwanath first. So, Vishwanath, you mentioned in an interview that before you did your security degree, you viewed information security as bits and pieces of security, like identity and access management, encryption, software security, etc. But now you understand that security is a much like broader subject, ranging from cyber attacks, cyber defense, cyber forensics, cyber incident handling, etc.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that, please?
That's a good question. Thank you, Anish. I mentioned this point when I finished my master's degree in cybersecurity from SANS Technology Institute. It's one of the most popular one which provides cybersecurity training and certification. Honestly, before that degree, that's true that I always felt I came from an identity and access management background. So I used to do this, cross-domain single sign-on with SAML, and I used to do coding in this. I was an identity and access management guy, both in authentication and authorization, fine-grained, and a little bit. And then when I moved into AppSec, I was doing a lot of threat modeling, secure coding. So I used to do secure coding trainings based on like WebGoat or NodeGoat or Juice Shop, these kind of platforms I used to use. But that was, and I used to call myself a complete cybersecurity guy. I didn't know that until I was formally trained through a proper degree, where I understood cybersecurity is a big word, as big as the word computers, as big as the word computers.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say, you can imagine everything, right? So like the skills that people need when we talk about, for example, cyber attacks. When I say cyber attacks, it's not the same for everything. Like when you attack web applications or web APIs, or when you attack cloud platforms, when you attack mobile applications or mobile handset, or you're attacking the networks, you're attacking the servers, you're attacking wireless, you're attacking blockchains, you're attacking AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. The skills that people need is so different, it's diverse. Or in the process of attacking, are you looking at developing custom exploits in this process? And how are you using social engineering to be able to pass your exploits to the target victims? So it's different. Or if you move into cyber defense, I mean, in terms of enterprise security architecture, like where you put in TOGAF and all the security frameworks, how you have a proper SIEM in place, security incident and event management, and how you do threat hunting, like you have a PCAP files. Like for example, every company has corporate proxies, right? Like web proxies. The log file, there's a log file behind that. So the logs, PCAPs, how do you do threat hunting on those? Like with Zeeks, some tools like Zeek, or you have a proper SOC in place for incident handling. I mean, the skills that are so diverse, I felt that a kind of master degree for me, that really blown myself into a full cybersecurity person. I mean, even in a little bit of cybersecurity management, like how effectively you have to be a CISO, like concerning about understanding the culture of a company and linking it to the cybersecurity policies. I mean, having an internal audits or GRC in place, how to do executive reporting. I think it's a holistic knowledge that I gained through that, and that's where I made that statement.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, because just given the sheer breadth of disciplines within security that's just developed over the last few years,
Right.
I think it makes a lot of sense that you can't really batch cyber security into like pigeonholes, right?
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, it's a whole like a slew of disciplines, honestly.
So true.
Yeah. Okay, so my next question is for Palak. So Palak, as a software engineer at CGI, how does your job as a developer intersect with security for the products that you build? As in, like, do you have any security responsibilities, or how do you interact with the security team as a developer?
Yeah, like I'm not into security as much as like Vishwanath, like he has broader knowledge. But as a developer, we just make sure that our code is free of security vulnerabilities. We make sure that we are following the right security coding best practices by adding lots of input-output validations. And also, we just make sure that code is free of all the security vulnerabilities, like SQL injection is there, CSS is there, and such attacks. So what we do, we try to use the right frameworks and tools to scan the code. So we get to know the any security vulnerability before we are deploying our codes by using the right tools and all the frameworks. And if our applications or code requires interaction with the databases, so we make sure that we are storing or using the right storage to store the DB credentials, and we are encrypting our DB credentials and just secure password storage tools we are using. So these are the things that as a developer we follow. And yeah, we do interact with the security team time to time just to make sure that we are handling all the security vulnerabilities.
That's cool.
So would you say that you're spending a significant amount of your time handling all of these things as a developer, or maybe that's slightly?
Slightly. As a developer, we don't focus much on security. We have dedicated security team for that. But yeah, in terms of tools and frameworks and making sure that sensitive information we are storing, like encrypting everything, we just make sure from our side.
Fair enough, because it has to be a bit of a collaborative effort, right? You have to have the developers and security working together to solve the same problem. So
the target is the same. So.
Yeah, exactly. So, makes
it's
sense.
a shared responsibility of developer and security team.
It's good to meet you, Palak, that both security and technology, like development, you are together. You're one of those elite people, actually, I would say. So very good that dev guys are not living on their own. They are not living in their own world. So it's good that you're also having a hat of security on you. This is good.
Yeah, in fact, like we talk a lot about, sorry, go on, Palak.
No, you go.
In fact, we talk a lot about security champions, and this is something that, developers really, so developers who are especially interested in security really take on the mantle of security and push that sort of agenda within the development team. And I think that really helps, bring the whole, bring it into a cohesive whole, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
So for you, Vishwanath, my next question would be, so Later in this webinar, we'll just quickly going over a lab where we attack an EC2 instance on AppSecEngineer. So I thought I'd ask you about your experience with EC2. Is your work with EC2 more on the offensive or more on the defensive side, or would you say it's a mix of both? What would your answer be for that?
Yeah, honestly, EC2 is one part of the big AWS umbrella, and now AWS is one part of the big cloud umbrella, and cloud is one part of the big cybersecurity umbrella for me. So just focusing on EC2, my role is specifically on creating guidelines and policies and best practices across any technology that people use in my company, any technology. So whatever that comes to anything like containers or cloud, whatever you talk it, I have to provide. Specifically for EC2, so it will be a combination of attacking and defending, I will say. So I'm not specific to one thing, definitely. Like for example, on the attacking EC2 instances, to go a little bit precise onto the attacking part, we obviously focus on starting with like port scanning and service enumeration, understanding that there is an EC2 instance. You need to understand what kind of service exists, exploiting any sort of misconfigurations, even fuzzing, discovering any web applications that exist on an EC2 instance, for example. If there is any possibility for a local file inclusion or a remote file inclusions and all of that, any dependencies and runtimes that are there any Java, insecure versions of Java and any other things that exist? Or if I can get access to a basic account, can I do a privilege escalation to become a root user? Or can I escape from one container of EC2 to probably another one, jumping from one thing or can we inject malware through any other mechanisms? Can I push through a Trojan? So lots of things, it's not something that we can nail down every point, but attacking has got innovated so much that every person has their own way of attacking things, right? So it at the end depends on the skill of the person. So it's so unique for every pen tester that they do. But fundamentally, we look at very basic things like those that I mentioned from attacking. But more switching to the defense aspect, definitely the main key focus starts with like hardening the platforms, removing any unnecessary services that we have, making sure that we have a proper cloud formation or Terraform templates that we provide to the organizations who want to create an EC2 instance. EC2 can be used for your dev platforms, can be used for production platforms, can be used for testing, evaluating some products, can be wide scope, right? You don't have. So we created our internal templates with stronger access control systems, with enabling VPC flow logs and all of this. We have enough monitoring through SIEM tools, like a lot of AWS tools and all of this that we do to have a proper SIEM in place and data backups and all of this that we think of. But sometimes, honestly, these things, some project teams skip these, they try to go on their own, which is another story. But defending, we want to take a big part of defending and we create all these infra as code templates, YAML files and all of these, and we deliver to the project teams to be able to use those. So they are secure by default.
Right. Yeah. So like I think what the learnings that you get from the offensive side of your activities, the offensive activities kind of feed into the, the defensive measures that you take, right?
Of course. That's why I say we lock our hose only if we know if there is a threat of somebody stealing something. If you never know that somebody is stealing, you'll never lock your hose. So defense comes only after offense, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how we are.
That's great. Thank you for that. That was a very detailed answer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, Palak, my next question to you would be, as someone who is certified in multiple areas of AWS, what has your journey really been like? When you think of the most important skills or most important takeaways from your training in AWS or your journey into cloud security, what would you say your most important takeaways are in terms of skills?
Okay, so Anish, my journey in AWS have both been like challenging and rewarding. Challenging because as AWS 250 plus services, learning and gaining knowledge about this, you need to have a holistic tutorial plan or some resources to learn about all these services. So The first challenge was to find the right resources to gain experience and knowledge about all these services. Like if you go and search about, you will find many YouTube channels, then you have to research
Right.
which, yeah, from where you can learn and understand everything. So, like I started my journey just by I was just scrolling through the YouTube and I came across one channel like how to become a cloud engineer. So at that time, I was exploring all the domains, AWS, DevOps. I wasn't sure like which way I have to go. Like I believe initial year of your careers goes into just exploration. You just have to
Yeah.
explore and find out what your interest and passion is. So that's how I started my journey. So I was just researching about the AWS, then I just watching some of the YouTube channel. I created my free tier account, and after creating the free tier accounts, I just gone through I enrolled in some of the Udemy courses. There I started learning about the AWS services. So my approach was to whatever I'm learning, I try to build and do hands-on. I make sure that I'm doing enough hands-on to understand the services. Suppose if I'm learning EC2 instances, so after completing the tutorial or watching the video, I go on AWS account, I create EC2 instances, security groups, and I just try to build the projects. So I think that was the best way or best decision to learn the AWS. So after doing lots of hands-on and getting the like solid foundation of all the AWS services, so that's when I thought now I'm ready. Now I can appear in exam. So I appeared in exam and yeah, I cracked it. So this was my takeaway. Just don't aim for certifications. If you are learning anything, just learn it like go all in, learn everything, do
Yeah.
hands-on, build some projects, and then you will feel confident. Like now I am ready. I have learned enough. I know my
Right.
fundamentals are strong. So that's when you can go for certification. So this is my takeaway. Just don't learn for certification. Learn to gain knowledge, experience, and build something out of it, whatever you are learning.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, it's only when you really build something by hand and you're actually getting the hands-on experience that you really end up, learning proper skills that will, hold you in good stead in a real world environment, right? So that's kind of exactly what we do at AppSecEngineer. We kind of push our learners to try as many labs as possible, as many challenges as possible, so that they can, kind of get that really real world hands-on experience.
Right.
So that's I'm happy to see that you have taken a similar journey as well, and that you've come away with a similar understanding of what cloud and cloud security should be like.
And if
So
I can
that's
add
great.
one point, if I can add one
Yes,
point
of
over
course.
Palak's point, is on the certifications aspects. Sometimes people do certifications either for job or whatever reasons. But for me, certification is something that will take you one step beyond your reading that you did. So every time, I'm a certifications guy, so I'm a little biased on that. I did
Yep.
so many certifications. But for every certification, I used to read a lot and I used to prepare myself. But in the process of preparing for an exam, I was reading a bit more. So it always took me one step more than my regular learning. If I skip the certification part and I just focus on the training, sometimes I don't know how much I absorbed that information, and I was a little stuck on that point. So certification sometimes really identifies what are the good things about you and where are the areas you need to improve. So
True.
so that is where I really value every certification. So beyond every training, I believe there must be certification.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of sets a barometer for you to measure yourself by, right?
Exactly.
Like that's the
That's
reason
the
we do
key
have
point of
competitive
certification.
exams.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you.
So yeah. So again, and my next question to you, Vishwanath, would be: so, are there any specific tools or services that you use with EC2 on a regular basis, and what are they, and what exactly do you use them for?
Okay, yeah. Tools for EC2, I have to say it's both some are cloud specific services or tools that I use, and some are outside the cloud. And it's a personal statement and a judgment I'm making. Don't get me wrong here. In my opinion, personally, being close to 20 years in cybersecurity, I don't believe any of the services default come with the cloud providers are great at security. In my personal opinion, okay. So I often tend to use professional tools that are really good at their own job or that they are doing, and they do the job for me. For example, I use a lot of Nmap, I use Metasploit, I use Nessus, tools like this that are not related to a cloud platform but are generic in nature. As long as you have an IP address or a system that you have credentials to log in to SSH or whatever, you can use. I use these tools. They are generally the common ones I can think of. But specific to the cloud, I will say everything that you can think of, like for AWS EC2, maybe systems manager, the playbooks with Python, some of those which like resonates to Ansible for patch management, for example, or an AWS inspector, kind of a Nessus platform, IAM, and obviously identity and access management, kind of looking at every permission, CloudTrails, auditing and logging, or perhaps guard duty, monitoring the threats in like VPC flow logs and all of that, and probably even AWS config, looking for any history of changes that are happening. All of this is some of the cloud specific ones that we use, but yeah, it's a mix. Some are cloud ones and some are generic ones. These are some of the tools I can think of.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I think some of the tools that are provided by the cloud providers themselves don't quite go the extra mile in terms of like either customizability or features and things like that.
Oh, glad you agree with me, but yes, that's my opinion. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Palak, in your experience, are there any particular aspects of AWS that you think people don't focus on enough? And have you noticed any shortcomings from colleagues around you, or the organizations they've worked for in the past or present?
So in my experience, I have noticed some of the aspects that organization or people don't focus much. Is one of them is cost optimization. You should notice or monitor all your resources, how you are utilizing your resources properly or not. When you are running your EC2 instance, when the traffic is more, when you can stop and save the cost, and how you can leverage the auto scaling. So, it can shut down your instances when it is not in use and then again launch when traffic is more on your website. So cost optimization is one of them, and other one is security, like implementing and getting right IAM access for your users and authorization and enabling multi-factor authentications, and then providing role-based authentications to the employee and implementing a strong IAM policy. So these are some of the aspects that all organizations should focus on. So these are my, and which none can add on more.
No, it's pretty good. What you covered was good.
Yeah, I think IAM policies is something that it's quite easy to to overlook it, but it's like one of the most important aspects when you're when you're thinking about like cloud security and access to your employees and things like that, to the developers and such. Okay, so I think we can probably I think we have time for one more question for each of our guests. So yeah. So Vishwanath, in your experience, what are the 3 most important security controls one must consider with EC2?
3 most important security controls for EC2. Okay, I can generally categorize this into like, for example, first one would be apply the principle of least privilege in everything. Like, for example, networks, server, application, or data. So you have an EC2 instance. So how you connect through network to it, the network ports, everything, the servers, the runtimes, everything, the way you access it, the transport layer and everything, the application that you host on it and the data, in all of this, you focus on principle of least privilege. So the way you, and it's time bound, by the way, some people forget principle of least privilege is time bound. That means if I grant an access, it's not indefinite that it lives forever. So there is a particular period after which it should auto expire. So that's one thing. So focus on principle of least privilege at the network level, server, app, and the data for an EC2. And the second one I can think of is go for defense in depth. Don't rely on one level of protection for your EC2. The moment you want to create an EC2 instance, you want to develop your software by using an EC2 instance, or you want to deploy your application onto an EC2 instance, or you want to access or operate your application on an EC2 instance. For all of this, make sure surrounding from network, host, server, application, and the data, there is a defense in depth. There are multi-level defenses possible. That's my second one. And if I can think of the third one, the best I will say is have a strong SIEM and SOC in place. I mean, no matter what you do, incidents are natural. Hacks will happen because we are humans. We make mistakes, and and different people think differently. So even if you try to protect from some hacks, still the hack can happen. So you need to have a good SIEM and SOC, Security Operations Center, in place that can continuously monitor EC2 for any other unauthorized access or data exfiltrations that happen, probably ransomwares, we don't know. So have a SIEM and SOC in place. So these are the top three I can think of.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And my last question for Palak would be, so Palak, you're actively writing blogs and doing research in AWS. So what are some trends in AWS that you've been noticing recently? And have you seen any important trends in AWS security in particular?
Yeah, so I've noticed a few trends in AWS, and one of them is Lambda, that is serverless architecture. So organizations are leveraging the serverless architecture, so they just want to get rid of overhead of like managing servers, and it can get they can use Fargate and serverless architecture, just to get rid of all that server things and stuff. And the other thing is containerizations and Kubernetes, like AWS provide ECS and EKS so that you can easily manage and orchestrate your containers. And the other thing is AI and ML. Like after ChatGPT, we are seeing like all internet and LinkedIn everywhere. Everyone is talking about the AI. And the AWS also offers some of the services for managing AI and ML, like SageMaker and others. So these are the trends I have been noticed. And in terms of security, I have been noticing like AWS provide features like single sign-on, SSO, then security hub is there, then guard duty, cloud trail, there are a lot. So these are some of the things I have noticed.
Okay, great. I think Vishwanath, you wanted to add something there a little earlier.
No, I was just supporting her viewpoint that on the serverless point, yes, indeed, many organizations are moving that. Like, for example, we use ECR so much for container registry, ECR and Lambda everywhere. So there is Azure functions. Serverless has been so much, the utilization percentage of serverless is growing every day. I was just vouching for her.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Palak, for the answer as well. I think we have a question from the comments. It says, do you recommend to use native security tools in AWS? Would any of you be happy to answer that?
I can take it, and you guys can compliment if you want. I think the answer to that question depends on what level of security you currently have in your organization as a policy. If you are starting from scratch and you're a startup company, you don't want to put heavy costs to commercial companies out there. Start with some things that AWS provides you. Go on pay-per-use model, which is cheaper to start with because you don't have anything. But if you are a company which is a very large company and you have security is really utmost important because you're probably serving government or defense kind of industries, healthcare, where there's a lot of focus on security. I think you want to come out of the cloud default ones as of they provide today and go for more professional ones that are available in the market.
Right. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Vishwanath. I think we are out of time for questions. So I think we'll just quickly run through a short section of our attacking EC2 lab. So Ganga, can you please take over for that?
Yep. Let me just present my screen really quickly. Okay, just to set the context of what we're doing, I hope my screen is visible to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be looking at a library called VZPrint. It's a Python library that allows you to generate PDFs. And some time ago, in around 2020, there was a vulnerability that allowed you to gain access to the server, and you could allow it to like print a few variables or some data onto the PDF that has been generated on the other side. So what we'll be doing in our instance is we will be accessing this particular URL 169.254, 169.254. This is usually used by Azure and AWS to store some metadata.
IMDF.
And yes, so we'll be using that to generate a PDF that already contains some of the AWS credentials and they're going to be baked into the PDF that we want. So what we'll do is we will deploy an application that is vulnerable to this, and then just show you what the PDF is looking like on the other end. And to showcase that we have successfully completed the attack, we will also use the credentials to do a very basic bucket listing. So I have already gone ahead and deployed the lab for this. There are instructions for the lab. But to jump into the box, so this, what you're looking at right now, is the IDE that contains the information. It contains the running lab right now, and I have run a Terraform script that was able to provision an EC2 instance and the VPC associated with it. And along with it, we also have VZPrint running as an app under the application that will allow us to generate this PDF. So here's a sign up page for the application. I've already gone ahead and just filled it in. So all it's doing is asking us for a first name and a last name and an email. But the remarks section here is susceptible to input attacks. Basically, they're not doing proper validation. And what we're doing here is we're forcing it to look for this URL and also like include the role credentials that we have from under the SSRF role. Like this is a role that we've created on the backend AWS, on our account. So what we end up doing is we log into this particular account that we've created, and when we generate a PDF, we have a very standard looking box standard PDF. It just says this is your email ID and this is your username. What I will do now is I will download this PDF and just save it on my local machine and go back to whatever box that I was looking at. This is essentially a one-time use application box that every time you access our labs on AppSecEngineer, they're created and destroyed as soon as you leave. So I've gone ahead and basically re-uploaded the same PDF to this application to this box. PDFs are not going to be visible on this ID, obviously. And what I've done is I've run binwalk, and essentially I'm decompressing the PDF into all of its components. And when I do so, one of the components that I look at, just to like show you what the other components are, these are just going to be like some header tags and such that PDFs generally ship with. But one of them in this case is going to have baked in credentials.
Ooh.
Yeah. So VZPrint was quite the box of surprises, and it has access ID, your entire credentials for your, for your AWS account at this point. So what I've done, yeah. So what I've done is I've just set them up as environment variables, and I'm going to just show you that I'm able to access all the buckets that are going to be listed under this particular account. And I have one of the buckets listed here. The lab goes on from this point, but I will stop here for the sake of brevity. But the idea here is that the credentials were able to be extracted from an application that was sitting in your EC2 instance. And all of this was possible because we were not doing proper port scanning, we were not doing proper input validation, etc.
SSRS plus IMDF, the capital one hack, the big one.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Ganga. That was really interesting. So I think we are at the end of our live session, so we are out of time at this point. So before we end this, I mentioned at the beginning that we'd have a small bonus for the viewers that stuck around till the end.
Wow.
So Palak, would you mind sharing the the discount code that we have running for just this weekend only?
Yes, so AppSecEngineer is providing a discount for all the attendees. That is 25% on their security training bundle, and that discount is valid until 18th June. So go grab the discount.
Yep.
And
So every Saturday should be Skill Up Saturday, which is why we're having this AWS Friday discount code that is only valid until 18 June, just this weekend. So you should grab this 25% discount on only the AWS Security Essentials bundle. And I hope you get to try it because we have tons of courses, labs, and challenges, like pretty much the works in this one bundle. It's got just a ton of stuff. So this will keep you occupied for a long time. So I hope you get to try this. I hope you start learning just from this weekend onwards. And I hope you learned something really valuable from this live session, because I sure did. And I'm really glad I was joined by our two very distinguished guests, Vishwanath Chiravari and Palak Bhausar. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And
Thank
I'll
you.
see you in the next one.
thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.